Ukraine just revealed details of yet another successful deep strike mission on Russian soil. This time, Kyiv's covert operations specialists managed to take out one of Russia's most prized possessions, a brand new missile believed to be one of the best in the Kremlin's arsenal. It's another humiliation for the Russian President Vladimir Putin and another satisfying win for Ukraine. News of the incident was only just released by the head of the security service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk, and shared at a press briefing by the country's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on October 31. But the attack actually took place more than a year ago, on July 8, 2024 to be precise. On that date, in the dead of night, Ukraine's Security Service (SBU), Main Directorate of Intelligence (GUR), and Foreign Intelligence Service (SZRU) put their plans into action, taking out one of Russia's Oreshnik long-range ballistic missiles at the Kapustin Yar launch site in the Astrakhan region, which is situated in southeast Russia, bordering Kazakhstan and the Caspian Sea. Kapustin Yar is located at the northern edge of this region. It's been a major military training area for decades, dating back to the days of the Soviet Union. Numerous test launches of rockets and missiles have taken place here, and the area has nicknames like the Russian Roswell and the Soviet Area 51, due to the many top-secret weapons tests carried out here, along with alleged UFO sightings. This location also happens to be over 250 miles from the Ukrainian border, but as recent events have shown, Ukraine's armed forces have no trouble planning and executing attacks deep into Russia. Kyiv's forces have managed to bombard bases in Far East Russia, assassinate war criminals in mountainous central regions, and blow up high-value targets like oil refineries and production plants around its western territories. No part of Putin's vast domain is safe, and this recently revealed attack is yet further proof of that fact. Before now, only President Zelenskyy and a few foreign heads of state had any knowledge of this attack, but the GUR has now shared an extensive report on Telegram for all to see. Secret Operation: GUR, SBU and SZR destroyed a Russian Oreshnik missile complex on the territory of the Russian Federation. On the territory of the Kapustin Yar test site on the night of July 8-9, 2024, a ballistic missile of the Oreshnik complex of the aggressor state Russia was destroyed as a result of a joint operation of the GUR of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the Security Service of Ukraine, and the Foreign Intelligence Service. This was announced by the head of the SBU, Vasyl Malyuk, during a joint briefing with the participation of the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. According to him, the operation was classified and its results were reported only to the President of Ukraine and several leaders of foreign states. The President of Ukraine noted that, according to available information, the Russian Federation plans to deploy one of the Oreshnik complexes on the territory of Belarus. The radius of action of this system is about 5,500 kilometers and the dead zone is about 700 kilometers. We will remind you that last year the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine published the technical characteristics of the Oreshnik Kedar missile complex and a list of enterprises of the military-industrial complex of the aggressor state of Russia involved in its development. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine reminds that for every war crime committed against the Ukrainian people, there will be due and just retribution. As the Post notes, Russia reportedly has big plans for its Oreshnik ballistic missiles, which are very recent additions to the Kremlin's collection. They're believed to be based on the RS-26 Rubyezh Intermediate Range Ballistic Missiles, or IRBM, which were developed in the 2010s and tested several times that same decade, but never officially entered service. Since Russia hasn't publicly revealed too many details about these missiles, military analysts and expert groups have been forced to speculate, using the data available to make educated guesses about what the missile might be made of and how it likely works. This is what they believe. Like the RS-26 Rubyezh, on which it seems to be based, the Oreshnik is an IRBM that can be equipped with both conventional and nuclear warheads. It's capable of traveling incredibly quickly, with some reports suggesting peak speeds of up to or even over Mach 10, which is 10 times the speed of sound, or over 7,600 miles per hour. This, added to the fact that the missile is made to maneuver and evade enemy air defenses during its terminal phase, makes it extremely difficult to intercept in theory. On top of this, the Oreshnik is allegedly able to strike not just one, but up to 6 targets at a time. Here's how it appears to work. First, like any other missile, the Oreshnik is launched, presumably from specially designed platforms, using its first stage solid fuel to propel itself into the air and reach extremely rapid speeds in a matter of seconds. Eventually, the missile's first stage separates, with the empty fuel storage and burned out engines detaching from the remainder of the missile. Next, arguably the missile's most important component, its multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle, MIRV, detaches from the upper stage and after a brief burst of acceleration flies on a ballistic trajectory in the direction of its objective. This is the most significant stage of the missile's journey because it's at this point that the MIRV is believed to be most vulnerable to interception and mid-air destruction. However, if it can evade detection and interception to reach its destination, the MIRV will then use its onboard guidance system to orient itself in the right direction before releasing the multiple warheads hidden inside it. These warheads, each reportedly containing up to 6 submunitions, then fall to Earth one by one, each hitting a different patch of land and, in theory, a different and specific target. Experts know all this because the Oreshnik was reportedly used on November 21, 2024 in an attack on the PA Pivdenmash defense facility in Dnipro, Ukraine's 4th largest city. Initial reports suggested that this attack involved some sort of intercontinental ballistic missile, but subsequent assessments of the evidence identified the Oreshnik IRBM as Russia's weapon of choice. Putin himself also confirmed that Russia had successfully tested its new missile, stating, "We consider ourselves entitled to use our weapons against the military facilities that allow their weapons to be used against our facilities." Putin went on to state that the Oreshnik attack on Ukraine was a message to the Russian armed forces, the citizens of our country, our friends around the world, as well as those who continue to harbor illusions about the possibility of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia. Now, it's believed that the missile used that night also came from the Kapustin Yar training ground, and footage of the moment of impact shows the 6 individual warheads striking the ground in different locations. Fortunately, later reports revealed that despite the dramatic images captured at the scene, no major damage was sustained, with Russia using dummy warheads instead of real explosives, as confirmed by senior editor of the German tabloid Bild, Julian Ropke. Multiple surveillance cameras captured what are known as submunitions, i.e. an RS-26 re-entering the lower atmosphere. This horrific footage shows 6 missiles falling from the sky through the clouds. The peculiarity is that it was a decoy with the same mass and size, which is supposed to simulate a nuclear charge. This confirms it was a propaganda and political move, not a military one. There was no nuclear charge or explosives inside, which is why the damage was minimal. We don't see explosions in the video of the attack, only kinetic energy from a fall from a height of several hundred kilometers. Now, satellite images of the scene later confirmed that only minimal damage had been sustained to some of the roofs of the Pivdenmash buildings. Putin, meanwhile, has boasted of the Oreshnik's alleged power, stating at a Collective Security Treaty Organization (CSTO) summit in Astana, Kazakhstan, "We will respond with possible continued combat testing of the Oreshnik as we did on November 21st. The Ministry of Defense is currently selecting targets. These could include military installations, defense industry enterprises, or decision-making centers in Kyiv. Serial production of the Oreshnik has already begun. This missile can destroy even highly protected targets located at great depths. It reduces everything to dust. If the Oreshnik were used en masse, the force of the strike would be comparable to that of a nuclear weapon. No supply of even the most modern weapons to Ukraine will change the situation on the battlefield." Russia's president has also spoken about how his nation's new missile allegedly contains dozens of homing warheads that can strike targets with expert precision, how it can travel at speeds 10 times faster than sound, and how it generates temperatures on the ground at the point of impact that are comparable to those on the surface of the sun. He claimed too that the Oreshnik was more than capable of destroying underground bunkers situated 3 or 4 floors below ground, suggesting that the Kremlin could use it as some sort of bunker buster, taking out underground shelters or storage facilities in Kyiv and other locations around Ukraine. Of course, as it's known from countless examples in the past, Putin is prone to exaggeration, as well as blatant misinformation. He habitually stretches the truth and regularly makes up claims entirely to paint his country and his army in a far stronger light than it actually is. As such, we cannot take his claims about the Oreshnik as gospel, and it may in fact be nowhere near as powerful as he claims. Indeed, several experts have issued criticisms of the Oreshnik based on available data about it. Fabian Hoffman, for example, who is a defense expert and doctoral research fellow at the University of Oslo, claimed that despite a new name, the Oreshnik was actually little more than a continuation of the RS-26 project. I'd be extremely shocked if this missile system had more than 10% new parts. I think basically they just took apart the R-26 or just cannibalized it and then put together this new missile with a couple of upgrades and a new paint job. He went on to call for a calm reaction to the missile's reveal, while calling out Putin for his exaggerated claims about its velocity. I think it's really important that we don't overreact. I like his Putin's hypersonic comment. Of course, he had to put that in, but every medium-range ballistic missile will reach hypersonic velocity at one point, so this is just nothing. Jeffrey Lewis of Middlebury Institute of International Studies in California agrees. After examining images of the wreckage of the missile that was used in Dnipro, he argued in an interview with Reuters that Russia was simply reusing old technology, rather than introducing anything new or particularly groundbreaking. This is a new capability, but it's not a new capability that represents a dramatic change in the way that conventional weapons are developed. It's a series of old technologies that have been put together in a new way. Lewis went on to call the Oreshnik an expensive method to deliver not that much destruction, before suggesting that Putin was intentionally exaggerating the missile's capabilities as a way to intimidate Ukraine and the Western world. If it were inherently terrifying, Putin would just use it, but that's not quite enough. He had to use it and then do a press conference, and then do another press conference and say, "Hey, this thing is really scary. You should be scared." Michael Bonert, a defense analyst at RAND, spoke to Business Insider and also criticized the Oreshnik's cost-effectiveness and actual battlefield value. Oreshnik missiles are incredibly expensive for their limited conventional warhead size and quantity. While it has the range to target many locations without matching air defenses, its literal kinetic impact would still be low for the cost. At the same time, while criticisms can be clearly leveled at the Oreshnik and many other elements of the Kremlin's arsenal, it would be unwise to write this missile off as some sort of inoffensive failure. The best missiles have to fulfill three core criteria. They have to be fast, able to travel long distances, and capable of dealing enormous damage to their target. On paper, the Oreshnik checks all three boxes. It's believed to be lightning fast, as mentioned earlier, with peak speeds of Mach 10. It covers huge distances in a matter of minutes, and is reported to be capable of carrying out mid-air maneuvers in the final stage, which may aid in evading air defenses, improving the missile's odds of success. As far as range goes, Zelenskyy himself has stated that the Oreshnik has a reported range of up to 3,500 miles with a 453-mile dead zone, or no escape zone, which is where the probability of the missile successfully striking its target is at its greatest point. Thanks to that, Moscow would likely have little trouble striking not just any target in Ukraine, but even locations much further away, like the Baltic states, Poland, and other countries that have been rumored to be next on the Kremlin's hit list. Russia has even claimed it could attack any location in Europe with Oreshniks in under an hour. What's more, Zelenskyy has warned that Russia intends to relocate some of these missiles to Belarus, which would bring even more European targets into range. We understand that their approximate range is 5,500 kilometers and there is a dead zone of 700 kilometers. This means that Europeans, especially those in Eastern Europe, should pay attention to this. And everyone else too, we must pay attention to these risks. As far as firepower goes, Putin's claims of the Oreshnik turning anything it impacts to dust may be somewhat exaggerated, but there's certainly potential for this missile to deal a worrying amount of damage. It reportedly fires up to 6 warheads, each with up to 6 submunitions. That's up to 36 explosives in total, all hitting different locations on the ground and creating fireballs on impact. This means that the Oreshnik doesn't even necessarily need to be fired with immense accuracy because it can hit such broad areas, as confirmed by Tim Wright of the International Institute for Strategic Studies, confirmed to Reuters. It would distribute them submunitions over a wide area. It makes it useful for attacking large facilities. A well-placed Oreshnik strike could in theory deal devastating damage to expansive pieces of infrastructure, large structures, or concentrations of troops spread out around the battlefield. Fortunately, Russia doesn't seem to have too many of these missiles at its disposal at the moment. Back in June, while giving a televised speech to a graduating class of military cadets, Putin confirmed that large-scale production had begun. serial production of the latest Oreshnik medium-range missile system is underway. He didn't, however, state exactly how many missiles were being made. According to Ukraine, the answer is not a lot. President Zelenskyy states that Russia only has the capacity to make up to 6 each year. 3 were allegedly made in 2024, with one being launched at Dnipro and the other being taken out in Kapustin Yar by Ukraine's covert ops team. So even if Russia ramps up production, it's only going to have a handful of those missiles to play with, and that won't be enough to make any lasting change in the war. Additionally, with the Russian economy in such a perilous position at the moment, the Kremlin may not even have the funds needed to produce more Oreshnik missiles, or may prefer to allocate its resources elsewhere, focusing more on existing systems that have actually proven to be somewhat effective in Ukraine. Either way, the fact that Ukraine managed to take out one of these missiles, which inevitably cost a huge amount of money to make, is a cause for celebration, and there are 3 big takeaways from this story. First, as stated earlier on, this attack took place last year in the Russian region of Astrakhan, several hundred miles away from Ukraine. This proves that Ukraine can conduct successful strikes deep behind enemy lines. Thanks to that, Russian commanders know that no matter where they position, store, or hide their most expensive and important assets, they'll never be 100% safe from Ukraine's drones, missiles, and covert operators. Kyiv's forces can strike anytime, anywhere, and there's very little that Moscow can do about it. Second, it's interesting to note that this attack is only being learned of more than a year after it occurred. Often, Ukraine claims responsibility for attacks on Russian targets right away, or the GUR shares in-depth reports on Telegram and elsewhere, celebrating its latest victory and listing the various Russian assets its forces damaged or destroyed. This time was different. Ukraine decided to keep all information about this attack under wraps, playing its cards close to its chest. And this raises the question, how many other attacks have there been that aren't yet known about? It's highly likely that Kyiv's forces have taken out numerous other Russian weapons and assets over recent weeks and months, but are not yet ready to share their reports with the wider world. Therefore, it's possible that there may be additional attacks, just like this one, revealed in the months to come. The third and final takeaway is this. In its Telegram post, the GUR noted that back in late 2024, it published a report detailing the technical specifications of the Oreshnik missile, as well as a list of Russian military companies that are responsible for developing and producing it. In other words, Ukraine's forces know which companies are contributing to this missile, and they know exactly where those companies are based. Kyiv's drones and missiles could ultimately rain down fire on these all-important elements of Russia's military defense complex before the year is out. Now, watch this video to learn about yet another Russian army innovation that was heavily hyped by Putin, but has since turned out to be a complete failure. Or check out this video to see how Ukraine is waging an astonishing second war deep inside Russia, using covert ops, infiltration missions, and a shadow network of partisans and intelligence operatives to dismantle the Kremlin from within. And finally, remember to subscribe to our channel too, to continue to be informed, up to date, and aware of everything that's really happening in the Russia-Ukraine war and other major conflicts worldwide.